Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty wild plan for world peace. It starts with a stark warning from a US president about the military-industrial complex, and it ends with a proposal to, well, literally reprogram reality itself. Let's get into the Kukulkan plan.
So where does this all begin? You actually have to go back more than 60 years. We're talking about a warning from a pretty credible source, a former US president, who also happened to be a five-star general. He was talking about this powerful, kind of shadowy influence operating in global affairs. And that warning from back then? According to the source material we're looking at, it isn't just history. It's apparently reached a boiling point right now, bringing the world dangerously close to a truly unthinkable outcome. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at why we're on the brink of war. Then, we'll dive into this idea of a matrix of control. After that, we get to the proposed solution, a global border freeze. And things get even more interesting with reprogramming reality, all leading to the ultimate goal, activating a golden age. Let's jump in. All right, first up, the brink of war. We're talking about what the source material sees as the most immediate danger, this endless cycle of conflict that just seems to be driven by some very powerful interests. At the very heart of the problem, according to this worldview, is the military-industrial complex. The core argument is pretty straightforward and kind of chilling. The system doesn't just prepare for war, it actually profits from it. That creates a powerful economic incentive to keep the world in a state of conflict. And for a real-world example, the documents point straight to the war in Ukraine. They frame it not as a simple conflict between two countries, but as a classic proxy war, fueled by the MIC for, you guessed it, profit and geopolitical gain. And the stakes here, they're just astronomical. Take a look at this number, over 11,000. That's roughly how many nuclear warheads the United States and Russia have combined. It's a staggering reminder of the cliff we're all standing on. But here's the twist. According to this vision, all this tension we see on the news, it's just a symptom of something much, much deeper. So what is that deeper problem? Well, this is where things start to get really interesting. The argument is that the real issue isn't about politics or bad policies. It's about how we see the world. It's about a hidden system they call the matrix of control. This worldview basically says that the wars we see are just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it all, there's this hidden matrix of control, a system of unelected influence that allegedly shapes global events by keeping humanity in a constant state of fear and division. Okay, so what holds this matrix up? The sources point to four key pillars. We've already talked about the military-industrial complex, but they also name NATO, the World Health Organization, and the World Economic Forum, all incredibly powerful bodies that shape global policy. And how do you keep a system like that going? Well, according to the source, the number one tool is propaganda. The idea is, if you oversimplify complex issues and just appeal to raw emotion, you can keep people afraid, confused, and ultimately a lot easier to control. All right, so that's the diagnosis of the problem. It's a pretty heavy one. So what's the proposed remedy? The plan is both geopolitical and, honestly, pretty radical. The absolute heart of this whole thing is something called the global border freeze. It's a universal treaty that would lock all current borders in place, permanently. The goal is to just take territorial conflict, one of the main causes of war, completely off the table. And this slide really breaks down the proposed shift. The goal is to move from a world of competing military blocs, like NATO, to a universal security structure. Instead of proxy wars and sky-high defense spending, the vision is one of total non-aggression, funded by a modest contribution from every nation. Now, the economics of this are a crucial part of the argument. Instead of some countries spending, 2 to 5% of their GDP on defense, this plan suggests everyone just chips in 1%. The theory is that, collectively, that's more than enough to fund a global peacekeeping force for less, replacing competing alliances with true collective security. Okay, so we have a geopolitical plan. But you might be asking yourself, how on earth could a shift that radical actually happen? And this is where the vision takes a massive, unexpected turn. The argument is that you can't change the world without changing consciousness itself. The engine for this plan isn't political. It's metaphysical. The answer, according to the source, isn't found in treaties alone. The claim is that to really achieve this transformation, we need nothing less than a full-on recalibration of our collective consciousness.
The mechanism for this, as described in the documents, is a form of spiritual technology. The idea is to reprogram what's called the divine matrix, an underlying field of reality, in order to shift our collective timeline away from conflict and towards a more elevated state. A key part of this reprogramming involves what the source calls the Akashic records. You can think of it like a cosmic database or a universal library that contains all information, past, present, and future. The idea is that by accessing this field, you can understand and help correct the source code of our reality. And this metaphysical framework is rooted in a really specific belief about human nature, that we're divine hybrids, part earthly and part cosmic. The source argues that the matrix of control works by suppressing this cosmic identity. So awakening it is the ultimate key to breaking free. So that brings us to the final part of the vision. What is the ultimate outcome of all this political and spiritual transformation? What's the end game? The end game is to usher in a new era for humanity, a Satya Yuga, or a golden age. One defined not by conflict and fear, but by spiritual unity and a restored connection to the cosmos. And after all that, the geopolitics, the metaphysics, it all comes back to a simple but pretty profound idea. Global transformation is powered by personal awakening. The journey outward really does begin by going inward. So at the end of the day, this complex vision, blending global politics with cosmic spirituality, leaves us with a really provocative question. It presents a choice, a reality of endless conflict or one of collective spiritual awakening, which really makes you wonder, what does it truly mean to awaken? Thanks for exploring this idea with us.